So to do rear brakes on this Crosstrek, obviously jack it up, put it on a jack stand, take your wheel off. You want to loosen the lug nuts while it's on the ground, unless you've got an electric impact or something to get them off, because you'll struggle with them once it's up. It'll want to spin. Make sure your parking brake is off, because the parking brake is inside of the rotor hat here, and it'll need to be released to get this rotor off. These don't have a huge rust ridge. If there was a huge rust ridge in here, it would need to release the parking brake shoes in here to close it up, help get this off. I'll show you that when I get there. But yeah, so basically get to this point before you can start, and we'll go from here. Alright, there's two 14mm head bolts here and here. We're going to use to remove this part of the caliper. You don't need to disconnect the hydraulic line. We're not doing anything with the hydraulics. We're not replacing the caliper. Use hand tools if you want. I just have electric stuff. Make it go a little quicker. If these bolts were super hard to turn, there is a hex section here on the slide bolts. You can counter hold it here with, it looks like probably a 17, and help you break it free. This car's only got like 40,000 miles on it, so these can apart real nice. Put them aside, we're going to reuse them. Take the caliper off. The piston's pretty far out. These pads are pretty well worn. I measured the other side. They were about 3 mil. Brand new ones are 8. So just put this right up here. It'll sit on the control arm. Out of the way. And we need a small pry bar. Get these pads out of here. This should come off pretty easily. You can see they're pretty well worn. You know, compared to a new pad. This is a brand new factory pad. This is the original. Like I said, these are at 3, and these are 8, brand new. Alright, next there's a 17mm head bolt here, and here. This is holding on the caliper bracket. So you're going to loosen those, take them off. These might be really tight. Oh, yikes. The torque on these is like 80 foot-pounds, so yeah, they might be very tight. Oh my gosh. Okay. Broke those free. I'll use my electric ratchet to spin them out. Caliper brackets out. We'll put that aside for now. Remember, save these bolts. Now, this rotor's probably not going to want to come off because one, it's got some rust here, so I'm going to spray some rust penetrant. 2, like I said, the parking brake shoes are inside here. They shouldn't be tight. The parking brake's not on, but the other side of the wheel is touching the ground, so I can't spin this right now. I've already spun it around. You could pull this cap here if you had to, or pop it in. It doesn't matter. It'll come out when we do the pull the caliper off, pull the rotor off. There is the adjusters for the brake shoes in here, the little star wheel. You could find the adjustment with a flat bladed pry bar or screwdriver, and you could turn it whichever way makes it not tight. Would loosen it up, might help you get this off, but then you'd have to adjust the parking brake afterwards. I already did the other side. It wasn't too bad. What I'm talking about here is this rust ridge right here, and it doesn't look too bad. So I'm not going to touch the parking brake because I don't want to readjust them if I don't have to, because it's annoying. I'm going to use 2 M8 bolts. I think they're M8 by 1. Just like this. I'm going to thread them in here. first of all, I'm going to make sure all the dirt's out of there. So let me get some brake parts cleaner, and we'll spray some oil in there. And I'm going to push this rotor off. I keep wanting to call it a caliper. I'm going to spray some brake parts cleaner in here, clean them out. Let it dry. Spray some rust penetrant. Thread the bolts in. These happen to have a 13mm head, but yours might be different. Try to get them started by hand. Try not to use a impact or electric on these because you don't want to break stuff. Just kind of go in evenly. And it'll start to push this rotor off. Again, if it's really stuck, make sure your parking brake's not on. There it goes. It should start coming easier. It'll make some pops and creaks because it's coming over that rust ridge. But you're doing all right. Almost there. There it comes. All right. So yeah, that little rust ridge was holding up on these parking brake shoes, which are in great shape, so I'm not going to change them because they don't really get used that much other than parking. But now is a good time. You can spray them down with brake parts cleaner. So now if you had to adjust them, there's a star wheel down here, and you would turn it in or out. It would adjust the shoes, either in or out. And if you had to reset this, you would adjust them just so there's a little bit of drag on the rotor. That should be about right, but it's better if you don't touch them if you don't have to, because it can be really tricky to adjust a parking brake. And this one's working good, so I'm not going to mess with it. Got my little rubber cap that fell out of there. That's going to go back in our new rotor. Got these nice factory rotors with painted hats. I like to put them on backwards first. Give them a little brake parts cleaner. Inside too, because that's also a braking surface. Take them off. Put them this way down. A little bit of use anti-seize or brake caliper grease. You don't need a ton, just a little smear here. Put the brake rotor on. It doesn't really matter where it goes. I just happen to put it in the same spot. So if you wanted to, you could adjust this, but don't forget to put your little cover back in. If this was really loose, you could throw a lug nut on here to help hold it. This seems pretty good. All right, I'm going to prepare the brake caliper bracket for the pads. So it's got, these are the old clips. Now if your new hardware didn't come with brand new clips, these little stainless things, you could spray these with brake parts cleaner, clean them with a wire brush. It's possible to reuse them, but if you've got new ones, use the new ones. I'll pop these out. Put some dirt, so spray some brake parts cleaner in here. A wire brush. Just clean up the surface where they sit. Do the same for both sides. pop them out, clean them with brake parts cleaner and a wire brush, just like this. So it's nice and clean. Put your new ones in, just like the old ones were. They should just clip into place, just like that. Same for the other side. See, if you don't clean these out, they might not clip in very easily. Just like that. Now you want some brake caliper grease, slide pin grease. You pull these slide pins out. Put a little bit of extra grease on them. Just pop them back in. Make sure they move nice and freely. Perfect. This is ready to go back up here. Alright, so now the caliper bracket is ready to go back up. Put it in place. Caliper bracket bolts. Put them all down. On the opening, you might need to move the bracket around. I'm just threading them in as tight as I can go by hand. I'm going to come back and torque these afterwards. One thing I almost forgot, put this rotor on. Sprayed some brake parts cleaner after. Alright, so take an old pad and your caliper compression tool. Get them in here, which these are pretty tight. Thread it in until it stops. Take this out. It's back up here.
Okay, so you gotta set up the OEM pads with the backing grease and the backing plates. So you start with the black one that goes on here over a layer of grease, and then the silver piece goes on top. You basically make it match what the OEM ones that came off look like. Alright, and then we're gonna add the grease to the ears. This also came with the OEM pad kit. So you just put it on each ear of the inside and outside pads. Don't need too much because you don't want it to get everywhere. Just gonna clean the pad with some brake parts cleaner. And we'll do the same for both of them. It's nice that these OEM pads came with all this extra stuff. Sometimes you get aftermarket pads. They don't come with these shims and they don't come with any of these grease. You gotta do it yourself. So now we're going to start by installing the inside pad. This will be the one with the the squeal the wear indicator. It's got the long metal thing that pops out from the back of it. So you slide it in, slide in the outside pad. Should be as simple as that. They should fit pretty well. Now we need the bolts that hold the caliper on. Slide the caliper on. If it doesn't slide on easily, you'll need to compress the piston some more. Just install these bolts by hand. Gonna torque them up afterwards. Okay, the caliper bolts need to be torqued to 20 foot-pounds. Now the caliper bracket bolts are torqued to 81 foot-pounds. Alright, with those torqued, the brake job is basically complete. You're going to put your wheel back on, torque it to 88.5 foot-pounds, and then when you get in the car, before you even start it, turn it on, push the brake pedal gently down. This will take up any slack in the piston from having it retracted, and it'll make the brakes feel pretty good. And then you should be all set. You shouldn't have to adjust the parking brake.